Today we're here with Jody Franklin. She is a functional medicine practitioner, and she's here to talk to you about some holistic methods and some different ways about reversing your vitiligo. And this has been a topic that has come up in the Facebook group a couple times. So please ask all the questions you need to ask. Jody is very friendly, and I am going to be in the chat. So Jody, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Actually, I don't think we're actually on Facebook right now, so I apologize. I don't know what's going on there, but we'll just go ahead and we'll post it up in the Facebook group later because I want people here that joined us on the live webinar to hear us. So thank you so much for having me. And my heart goes out to so many of you that are struggling with vitiligo. I actually had an autoimmune skin disease myself, and that's what got me into this line of work. I had chronic urticaria, which is hives, and I struggled for over 20 years just with hives all over my body, to the point where I couldn't walk some days because my feet were so swollen with hives, and I would be scratching myself till I bled every night, and it was really no fun. And now I'm happy to say I've been hive free for many years. I'm in full remission, haven't had any problem with it. And I got into functional medicine to help other people with skin issues, never realizing that I would become this foremost authority on vitiligo. And what happened is I went ahead and, and worked with a woman who came to me years ago with vitiligo. She was, having, she had it all over her body. Really, 2/3 of her skin had been depigmented, and she had had it since she was 8 years old. It was very devastating for her. And we just said, you know what, let's just work and see if this works. I wasn't sure if I could, but I knew I had the backing of my teacher, who is a chemist with 3 degrees from MIT. So I knew I had, the backing of an amazing functional medicine education. I'd helped so many people with other skin issues. I went ahead and started working with her. And within 8 months, she started to get significant pigment back on her skin. And, she barely could speak with me. She was crying so hard. She had to text me to tell me about it. And it was life-changing for her. Not that there was anything wrong with the way she looked, in my opinion, but it was more her internalizing that, she didn't want her skin to be this way. But even more importantly was the health benefits of working out and figuring out why you have vitiligo in the first place. Once you figure that out and address it, you're actually much less likely to get another autoimmune disease. In fact, once you get vitiligo, you're actually 80% more likely to get another autoimmune disease. And that's the big thing, is let's heal your body from within, instead of like putting medications on and creams on and things like that can help to a certain degree. For some people, they don't help at all. But instead of putting a Band-Aid on it, why not say, let's look upstream at all the root drivers for vitiligo and figure out, why do you have it in the first place and what can be done about it? And the reality is there's so many things that you can do and so many drivers for vitiligo that once you address all the different drivers, your skin will naturally heal, because a healthy body doesn't, a really, really, truly vibrant, healthy body on a cellular level does not depigment. It doesn't. So can we get everybody 100% better? Maybe, some people we have, and some people we've gotten 90% better, but there's just like the skin on their fingertips is too damaged. The melanocytes are just too damaged, so that, sometimes we just can't get 100% back, because you ever have a scar that just won't heal, that happens. So, but what we do is we address all these root causes. And I'd like to tell you about some of the root drivers so you understand it. And hopefully it can help all of you to understand what could be driving it in you and start maybe going down some rabbit holes to figure it out. And if any of you are interested, Sharon was kind enough to let me know that I could come into this group and tell you about my program. It's called Vanishing Vitiligo. And my assistant, Terry, is going to go ahead and put the website in the notes below. We'd appreciate if you could use Sharon's link for this as well to help support her and her causes, because she's an affiliate of ours as well. But if you're interested in this program, we are offering a special discount just for members of this group right now through Thursday, December 16th, and it's a substantial discount. We are giving $1,000 off the program to anyone in this group between now and Thursday. So we hope you do decide to take advantage of that. But if not, I hope you get a lot out of what I'm going to tell you about today, about what to look for with vitiligo and how to reverse it. And so those of you joining me live here on the panel, you can go ahead and, put in your questions below and in the comments and in the questions, and I'm happy to answer them as well. So first of all, one of the main causes of vitiligo is toxicity, and toxicity can be in so many different forms. So it can be environmental toxins, it can be endotoxins from within your body, from bacteria that are giving off bad toxins. It can also be from things like in your household, like cleaning products and personal care products, even the shampoos and soaps you use, and even the ones you can buy at the natural food stores aren't necessarily safe. So we actually look at the ingredients in all the different products and say, okay, what is in these products and what are you using on a daily basis? Because we never used to see vitiligo in children, hardly at all. I mean, we didn't see babies born with vitiligo. This didn't happen years ago. There's an unprecedented amount of environmental toxins and toxins in our products that we never ever had before. And in fact, I want to show you all this. The average woman is exposed to 168 toxic chemicals a day. And babies are born with over 200 industrial chemicals and pollutants in their umbilical cord blood. And so, things like if your product says it has fragrance or perfume in it, that's a way that these people can go ahead and hide hundreds of toxic ingredients and call it fragrance. It's like an industry loophole, especially here in the United States. There's just, there's no regulation on it. And the regulation that they have when somebody complains about a product and complains about an ingredient and has a lot of issues and there's a lot of people complaining about it, then it's reactive. They say, oh, we may want to take this ingredient off the market. And in fact, there's only 11 ingredients that have been banned in the USA in personal care products, where if you go over to Europe, there's over 1,000. I think it's over 1,200 ingredients that have been banned from their products. So you just think about the cumulative effects when you mix this ingredient with this ingredient and how toxic it can be when you put these things together. One of my clients came to me as a boy. I was working with his mom, and he went on a camping trip and he put a mosquito necklace on. I don't really know what this is. I've never heard of mosquito necklace, but I guess it's these things the kids were putting on to repel mosquitoes. And the mother came to me and said, that's how his vitiligo started. He woke up the next day with a giant white ring around his neck. And you've probably heard of chemically induced vitiligo. So this can definitely happen and can definitely be a contributing factor causing vitiligo. So that's one of the things that we look at is toxins. And I remember one of my clients was telling me his father used to burn all these toxic building materials in their yard. He'd sit there and breathe it all the time. And now he has autoimmune disease from that. So this is one thing that we look at. And then if you have all this burden of toxins, even if it was something you're exposed to 10 years ago, you could still have a body burden of it. Now, you and I might be exposed to the same amount of toxins, and I might be just fine, and you might be suffering mightily with 3 autoimmune diseases. So your ability to handle toxins and methylate and get rid of the toxins in your body is different from person to person. There's genetic SNPs, they're called. They're singular nucleotide polymorphisms, but that's a fancy way of saying, your genes, you might have a genetic predisposition to not be able to rid your body of toxins very easily. So if you have that and then you get exposed to a bunch of toxins, and let's say you have fatty liver on top of it or something like that, where your liver's not clearing toxins that well, or you're eating a diet that maybe gunking up your liver and your gallbladder system, that hepatic biliary system, and you can't clear those toxins, they're just going to recycle in your system, right? Or maybe you're constipated and you're not taking out the trash, so to speak. Those toxins are just reabsorbing into your system and causing this terrible, terrible dynamic. So toxicity is a big driver for vitiligo. And in fact, just for watching today, those of you who registered for this talk are going to go ahead and get that free avoiding toxins guide that we put together for you. So you should be getting that. And those of you watching the Facebook Live, if you'd like to message Terry Clanton, your email address, she can put you on the email list for our program, and we will go ahead and send you a copy of the avoiding toxins document. So you'll have a nice handout so you can look at your household items and things to watch out for. So that can be helpful as well. I think there are some questions here. Let me just see. Sorry, it's in the Q&A. So what is the first step to find out why I have vitiligo? That's a great question, Melissa. And so I am going to go through the different root causes, and toxicity, I'm quite sure, is probably one of them in your system. So and I'll go through some of the other things to find out why, because it's not usually one reason. There's usually multifactorial. We like to say there's like a stool that you sit on. Let's say you sit down on a chair or a stool, and there's all these thumbtacks sticking up out of them, and you sit down, and now you have all these tacks in you, right? And if you remove one of those tacks, is the pain going to go away? And the answer is, of course, not very significantly, because you have all these other ones sticking up into you, right? So you remove the toxicity, and that's just one of the things that we need to remove. But what about all the other drivers? So I'm going to go through all these other drivers. It's almost like a rocket launch sequence. You have to turn on all the keys in order to find your skin that get to the melanocytes to start basically producing more pigment and healing and getting the pigment back on your skin. So the toxicity piece is huge. And one of the things that you can do just in your own household also is to stop using, if you have a home, stop using weed killers on your lawn, things like glyphosate or Roundup. That's a big driver for vitiligo. There's so many chemicals dumped on our crops. If you look at, I know there was a big controversy about GMO foods, and people say, well, GMO foods are just as healthy as regular foods. And, you know, the nutritional content may be the same. The problem is GMO foods, the reason they're genetically modified is so that they can spray pesticides on them and it won't kill the plant. So they have what are called Roundup Ready seeds, these seeds that actually defy, and they come up and they grow anyway through the soil that's been treated with this Roundup. So all the weeds around it die, and the soybeans or whatever come up through there and they're fine. Well, the problem is they're sucking up all the Roundup, right? So you have these genetically modified foods that your immune system may not recognize anyway, because it's been genetically modified. But the other thing is it's got a ton of pesticides that it's sucking up into the unit. So this can cause a problem for your immune system. It may not recognize what this thing is, and you're repeatedly, exposing your immune system to it. Through molecular mimicry, your immune system starts attacking, and it winds up attacking the melanocytes, the skin cells. So this is a big driver for vitiligo. You want to avoid using chemicals outside your home. You want to use harmful chemicals. You want to avoid using harmful chemicals inside your home. You want to eat as organic as possible. And I know that's a tough one for so many people, but if you're eating foods that are organically treated or organically grown, you're minimizing the toxic exposure, right? Because, organic foods, while, maybe just as healthy as conventional foods, maybe they have the same amount of ripeness and the same amount of vitamins in them and nutrients, or maybe they don't. There might be better, one might be better, one might be worse, but it's the toxicity, it's the pesticides that are put on those foods that, they're there to kill the little bugs, right? Those pesticides. Well, what's the difference between us and a bug? We're just bigger, right? So you keep exposing every day to all these nasty chemicals, you're going to wind up getting some issues with it. And so again, these are all things we look at. What you're putting on your skin matters. You're using soaps and shampoos, and people think, well, it's just out external, it's no big deal. Well, your skin actually can absorb toxins. About 60% of what you put on your skin gets absorbed into your bloodstream and can wreak havoc with your hormones. It can wreak havoc with your immune system. It can wreak havoc with, contains carcinogens. There's all kinds of problems here. And we have an unprecedented amount of autism and cancer also linked to toxicity in our country and really all over the world. It's starting to happens. So you definitely want to avoid as many toxins as you can. And I think this is part of the guide, but Terry just put in the comments the EWG list. You want to do we can put that in the comments of Facebook too, if you're watching the replay here. But you want to eat the foods that have the least pesticides, and then buy organic for the ones that have more pesticides. So those are all things to look at. So toxicity, again, huge driver. Another big driver for vitiligo is gut issues. And unfortunately, so many of us are eating foods that may be messing up our guts. We may be eating, we may have taken antibiotics, several courses of antibiotics throughout our lives. There's all kinds of reasons why your gut might be messed up. Antibiotic use, unfortunately, it can be life-saving, of course, but and if it's needed, you have to take it. But unfortunately, we're using way too many antibiotics in our, eating them in our food, because the animals, if you're not eating organic meat, are treated with antibiotics. So you're getting a little hit of antibiotics there. If you've taken a bunch of antibiotics, or even one course can completely wipe out the good bacteria in your gut. So we have to look at what's going on in your gut. And when you have an overgrowth of bacteria, of bad bacteria, or maybe not enough good bacteria, you may not be absorbing nutrients very well. And that's the problem. You could be eating a healthy diet, but if you're not digesting the food well, absorbing it well, and getting it into your cells, then we have a problem, because you're not getting nutrients in. You need to have nutrients in order to fight disease and help your skin develop melanocytes, right? It's dependent on nutrients. So that's a huge issue for people with vitiligo. We almost always find nutrient deficiencies. So some of the tests we do in our Vanishing Vitiligo program include, first of all, toxicity test, but we also include tests to figure out which nutrients might be missing in your system. And it could be different from two different people who have vitiligo. One person could be not have enough zinc, another person could not have enough copper. I mean, there's so many, and they compete with each other. So if you don't know and you're just taking zinc because you think it's right for you, you could be doing the wrong thing and making the vitiligo worse if you're zinc dominant and don't have enough copper. So these are all things that we look at, and nutrient insufficiencies are usually a big driver. So nutrient insufficiencies and gut, either dysbiosis, where you have too much of some bacteria and not enough of others, or pathogenic species in your gut. Maybe you traveled overseas, or maybe you again did a course of antibiotics and the bad bacteria took over because you wiped out some of the good bacteria. So these species are taking over and really wreaking havoc in your system. There could be parasites. We find this often with vitiligo also. So I just was working with a little girl who's 4 years old, and she had terrible vitiligo. She's starting to depigment her skin, and we identified that she had a parasite, and that was why her immune system was so overwrought and aggressive and was attacking her skin. So we took care of the parasite, and now her skin is repigmenting, and she's gotten amazing results so far. We've only been working together about 6 months, and she's getting significant pigment back on her skin. So these are all things that we look at. So we look at gut, we look at digestion, absorption. We want to look at the health of your liver to make sure that you don't have a gunked up liver system. And again, liver and hepatic biliary system. You want to look at the gallbladder and all these things. Is it concentrating bile well enough? We look at stress. Now, stress can be both physiological and emotional. So there's different types of stress, but stress is almost always involved also with vitiligo and other autoimmune diseases. And then just so many other pieces to this. this is why our program is actually 9 months long, because there's so much to know and so much to do in terms of detoxing and getting everything you need so that your skin can produce more pigment. There's a question here: would growing hydroponic greens at home be safer than buying greens? And that's a really good question. Hydroponic, I'm not 100% sure of the process. If they use fertilizer, or is it actually like an organic process, because there's no soil with hydroponics. So it makes me wonder, is it as nutrient dense as, let's say, foods that you're buying from a local, let's say, farmer's market that's organic? I mean, something like that I think would be more ideal. But if you're in a food desert, you can't get greens. I mean, you can only buy from the 7-Eleven, and there's nothing there. There's just Slurpees and hot dogs and things. Yeah, I would go ahead and do the hydroponic. I mean, you want to try to get things as nutrient rich as possible. So I don't like that conventional crops are just they just pour nitrogen on them. There's so much more to crops. There's so much more nutrients needed from the soils. When the soils are rich, that's when the nutrients come into the plants. And unfortunately, if you look at the nutritional content of food, even just 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and you look at the content now, even of organic food, unfortunately, you're going to find that it's so much less nutrient rich than it used to be. And this is a big, big problem. And in fact, an orange that your grandmother may have eaten, or your great grandmother may have eaten, actually has about 8 times as much vitamin A as an orange does today. So 8 times more. You'd have to eat 8 oranges to get the same nutrients, the same amount of vitamin A that your grandmother would have had from 1 orange. So, wow. I mean, just think about that. Think about all the disease dynamics that are happening because we don't have enough nutrients. And the problem I see often is people are like, well, I'll just go ahead and buy a vitamin. Well, a lot of the vitamins have the wrong forms of certain vitamins, the wrong kinds that aren't really getting in for cellular effects. So this is why in Vanishing Vitiligo, we first of all identify what needs to be done. We don't just recommend blanket supplements for everybody. And this is why in our program, you actually will meet with our practitioners individually, as well as do the group dynamics. So we have both. You're going to meet one-on-one, and we're going to go through lab results with you and say, okay, this is what you need specifically. This is how long you need to take it. This is what and then you need to do this. So there's steps involved. It's probably, this is why very few people have success with vitiligo, because it's so complex. There's so many things that need to be done for it to work. And of course, you always hear stories of people that do it on their own and figured it out. But that doesn't work for everybody, and there's a lot to figuring it out on your own. Trust me, it took me over 20 years to figure out how to reverse my urticaria, and a lot of people don't want to wait because your skin's just continuing to depigment, and you want to get on top of this dynamic. So we offer this program just in January, and we will probably offer it next January as well. And we are offering you a chance to get to all the root drivers, figure everything out, what's driving it in you, have this support of the community, have the support of practitioners who are really well versed in functional medicine. And that's, in a way, functional medicine practitioners have all kinds of levels of experience. There's no standardized certification for it. So there are some functional practitioners, and I'm not trying to throw in under the bus, but I'm just trying to tell you the reality, that will do a 5-day intensive and call themselves a functional medicine practitioner. And that's a lot of people. They can do that, and that's perfectly fine. It's a great introduction to functional medicine. But I've been studying it for 7 years, and I feel like I've only just tipped the iceberg. I mean, it is crazy how much there is to know in this field. There's so much research that goes into it, and there's always new studies coming out. So we always try to keep up with everything. And my teacher, who we all learn from, everybody on the Vanishing Vitiligo team, is certified with a teacher who is a scientist by background. She's a chemist, and she has 3 degrees from MIT. So just completely, really, really brilliant. And one of the most brilliant people I've ever known in my life, and really teaches us how to figure all this out. So I really hope that you'd all decide to do it. If not, I hope you got some good tips out of this. Sharon, did you have any other questions on vitiligo, about what needs to be done to reverse this dynamic? I can show you all what the tests look like, some of the tests that we take.
Yeah, I didn't have any questions. I mean, I can only kind of ask about myself. Let me put myself back on screen here. So yeah, so if you've known me for a while, you may have met me with vitiligo taking up about 70% of my face, in a big butterfly around my face and my lips and my nose. And the vitiligo I had was much more severe before 2018. And I did develop a stomach condition that we're pretty sure is cystic vomiting syndrome, which doesn't really have, doesn't have a cure. So basically, whenever my stomach feels like it, everything has to go, and I'm miserable for about 12 hours.
Oh boy.
But because of that, that was in about 2017 when it started. But the worst of it was definitely probably right before 2018. And I noticed that when I changed my diet around that, I stopped drinking coffee. I stopped, I had already pretty much given up alcohol. I stopped eating red meats a lot. I noticed a very aggressive repigmentation over the past. So that was in 2018. And I saw a picture of myself, one of those Facebook replay pictures in 2018. And I did a side by side because, people thought I was like wearing makeup because, and they're like, and I have all these people asking me like, what did you do? How did you do that? And I'm just kind of like, well, I, changed my diet a little bit, reduce stress and just, those things that they kind of tell you to do. So, it wasn't on purpose, so I'm, if you want to kind of explain those type of phenomena, because that's something that's common that I hear a lot. David Thorne down in Ohio talked about that too with his healing, that he saw a lot of repigmentation in changing his diet and more holistic things. So yeah, if you want to give me a way to explain that, that would be
absolutely. And I want to say good for you. I mean, that's amazing. And in fact, I also want to add that my co-founder of Vanishing Vitiligo, her name's Lisa Jackson. She and I started this program together. She actually had vitiligo herself as well, and had it, all around her eyes and her mouth and hands and elbows and knees and everywhere. And she is in remission now. I never even knew she had vitiligo. When I mentioned I was working with people with vitiligo, she says, oh, I have that. You do,
right.
So she works with vitiligo as well. And so, yeah, it is completely possible. And we see it all the time. I could show you some success stories from my practice with it. But to your point with the nutrition, now this is a huge piece of it. And this is why the group program is so successful, because we go through with you what to eat, what not to eat. People are so confused. Do I eat curcumin? Do I not? Do I eat blueberries? Should I not? It's like, what do I do? And there are definitely foods you're going to need to avoid in the short term going through the program that we reintroduce. So we do some, and we also do testing, by the way. That's another test that we do, is a food sensitivity panel. So I found out that I was allergic to vanilla and ginger. I was like, oh crap, there goes Thai food, my favorite. But yeah, I mean, things that you would think are normally healthy, and you might be allergic to and not realize it. So we pull those foods out, and we heal your gut, and then you can reintroduce those foods. But these are foods that can be very inflammatory for your immune system. So that's another test that we do. But for you, just adding more healthier whole foods can make a huge difference, as you've seen. So for everybody watching, if you learn one thing from this, two things from this today is just, look at toxicity and look at the food choices you're eating. You want to make sure you're eating whole foods. Your immune system does not know what a Cool Ranch Dorito is. Right? It's down there. You can imagine the sentinel cells in your gut saying,
like one of my favorite snacks.
Bob, dude, what is this thing? It's cool. It's your favorite thing. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, not good for your skin. Not good at all. And that was one of the things I learned just because, in my 30s, I gained a few pounds and I was like, I want to clean up my diet so I can lose a few pounds, a few vanity pounds, so I cleaned up my diet and then I realized, geez, I'm not breaking out as much as I used to be. My hives aren't as bad. That's what kind of hit me, sent me down this rabbit hole of like, okay, what else could I do to make this thing go away? Because I was miserable with it. But yeah, I mean, the food choices are huge and some people can do it with just nutrition. But usually, like with you did a lot of it with nutrition, but not 100%, right? You still got some, yeah. And I'm sure there's sometimes when you're more stressed out where it might get a little worse and then it heals up a little bit. And maybe in the summertime it gets better because you get more vitamin D. And then,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. And the summertime is definitely when I see a lot of repigmentation. I didn't do a lot of stuff outside, like in my community. So I do get get all of the vitamin D in the summertime. And yeah, definitely changing my sleep. My sleeping pattern used to be all messed up too. And I had to kind of get that together and just getting on a routine and not feeling as frazzled throughout my day. Like it definitely was kind of like a ripple effect. You sleep more, you eat better, you have more energy, you're able to, get a sleep pattern that makes sense. And, you get used to living without your favorite foods, I guess.
Yeah, I know.
Coffee was the hardest for me. Definitely was the hardest for me. I love coffee so much.
And coffee, I actually don't have much of a problem with vitiligo. I haven't had to have people reverse not eat coffee unless there are some instances where we recommend removing it for a while and reintroducing. So it just depends. Sometimes there's a similarity between coffee and other allergens. So molecular mimicry, another molecular mimicry issue. So sometimes we do remove coffee and then they can reintroduce, but I'll tell you, I can drink coffee now. I don't have any problem with it. So this, certain things you can and can't do. But I will also show you, let me see, let me just share my screen with you here. These are some of the tests that we do. And you can see, we actually see, is yeast an issue? This overgrowth? Are there certain bacterial overgrowths? Are there certain Clostridia present? Clostridia, you probably know it if you had something like C. diff. A lot of times with vitiligo, we see gastrointestinal, like, bloating or gas or, diarrhea or constipation, something going on in the gut for sure. Now, if you look down here, we also look at things like oxalates. This is usually high with vitiligo. I usually see these, but not always. So what's going on here? Why is the oxalates high? Is it because there's a yeast dynamic? Is there mold? Is there, what's going on? So we look at all these different things. We look at mitochondrial markers. We look at neurotransmitters. We look at, can see some of these other markers here. It probably looks like Greek to most people here. Some people are Greek, and this does not look like Greek too. But if you see, we do some nutrient markers here, and we often find that these are lacking with vitiligo, but it really depends on what you need. So we look at amino acids, we look at glutathione, which is the most powerful antioxidant. We look at your methylation. I know this sounds in minerals and things like that. So we're looking at everything. Another test that we used frequently, let me just try to move this over because I can't really see it, but we also do a GI map stool test. So we're going to see if you have any pathogenic species or parasites. If you have H. pylori, this is a big driver for vitiligo and overgrowth. You want to have a certain amount of H. pylori in your system, but you don't want to be overgrown because you can't absorb nutrients that way. Stomach acid issues. We look at the normal bacteria. If there's overgrowths or imbalances, there are not enough. We look at the opportunistic bacteria in your gut. So this is all amazing information that can tell us what's going on with you. These are some of the viruses and protozoa and parasites and worms that we look at. And then this information can tell us, do you have gunked up problems with your liver? Do you have high levels of beta glucuronidase? Are you recycling estrogen or are having trouble decoupling it? Are you, what's your status with gluten? What's your status with, your immune system response, secretory IgA? How's your elastase? How's your pancreatic function? Are you getting enough digestive enzymes? Do you have fat in your stool? Are you not digesting your fats well? So these are all things that we look at. And that's just two of the tests that we do. I talked about the food sensitivity tests that we do. We also do some basic blood work. This is all going to tell us what's going on. And to Terry's point, yeah, these are not labs that you generally get from your conventional doctor. They've never heard of these. These are labs that are very advanced. So anyway, that is what I wanted to say. And any other questions? Let's see if there's any other up here that you all have you go ahead and post them if anyone else has any. But again, if you're interested in the program, there's a little video introduction on the landing page. It's called vanishingvitiligo.com, but I'd like you to use the link that Terry is posting if you decide to do it. So that way we know you heard about it through Sharon, and it would help support her group as well. It doesn't cost you, it actually costs you less to save $1,000 on the program to use that link. So please do use Sharon's link for that. And, you can get in for a few $100s a month to do this program. I know it's expensive, but you're getting close to $2,000 or at least $1,500 worth of lab work that is included in this program. You're also getting the expertise of all of us and the one-on-one appointments, which, if working with us one-on-one is expensive, there's a lot of research and time that goes into it, and it's all built into this program. So this is the most comprehensive program for figuring out what's driving your vitiligo and showing you how to reduce it that's available today. We have had more success than anyone in the world with vitiligo. And I will show you a few things just in closing, some of my success stories. And this guy had psoriasis, so that's a little different, but you can see in 5 months it's completely reversed. But I want to show you some of this vitiligo stories. This is Erin. She had a whole bunch, and she also had sleep issues. I know, Sharon, to your point, you want to get your sleep down. It's super important to reversing vitiligo, is getting enough adequate sleep. And we also were able to reverse her acne and her GI issues. And you can see this is just about 5 or 6 months of progress there, and she continues to heal. We had to stop working together because she got pregnant, so she couldn't continue. She's gonna wait and then see me again. But anyway, you could see some of these other things that we work with. But this is a 4-year-old boy we worked with. You can see on the left his knees, and 6 months of progress on the right, and he is in full remission now. You would never know he has vitiligo at all. It's gone. This guy here, I think on the vitiligo landing page, that page that we talked about, you could see him today, where he's like 90% repigmented now. Let's see some others, the psoriasis. This woman here had, her entire side was white. Everything was completely depigmented. And now you can see she's quite repigmented now. This is one of my first clients that I worked with, but you get the idea. There's more pictures on the Vanishing Vitiligo page. I just don't have time to update my website with it all, but you could see some of our success stories there as well. But Sharon, I want to thank you so much for having me on. Julie asked, do you recommend the autoimmune protocol? And that's a great question, Sharon. We actually do recommend a certain restricted diet in the beginning, but not the autoimmune protocol. I think it's too restrictive, and I don't think it's necessary to reverse vitiligo. We haven't had to have anyone on that of a diet. It's really, really hard to do. I mean, if you can do it great, but it's so many people do it and they still have vitiligo because you're only addressing one of those tacks, which is diet, right? It's a great elimination diet, but there's so much more to it. There's so many other things that we need to address. And there are going to be some targeted supplements in this program, but it's not like we just replace medications with supplements. That's not true functional medicine. True functional medicine is going upstream, figuring out what's driving things, correcting them, and then hopefully weaning you off all the supplements, or at least maybe you'll just have a few maintenance supplements that you have to stay on because of your genetics or because of, you can't get enough from the food you're eating. There may be some, multi that we keep you on or something like that. But for the most part, we try to get people off just about all the supplements that they've been on because that's, it's just addressing the imbalances for a short period of time. And addressing, like, if there's microbial overgrowth, we have to do some antimicrobials. We do it all without medication, without any light therapy. People ask me, well, can I do light therapy with it? And I always say, why don't you wait? Because we want to see if what we're doing is working. And then once you start seeing some major repigmentation, then you can finish off with the light therapy, because light therapy is a Band-Aid approach. I mean, it works, but you stop using light therapy, the vitiligo is going to come back. So, instead of just keeping with the light therapy, why not get to the root causes and then use that to speed up the process of repigmenting in the end? So I think that's a great way to do it. And the creams, sometimes these creams, depending on what you're using, have adjuvants in them that are toxic, and you're putting it on your skin, and in the long run, it gets in your bloodstream, confuses your immune system, and can cause more autoimmune activity. So it's like, do all of them do that? You have to look at the ingredients, and you could check out our ingredients list, that things that we recommend looking out for sure. So anything else, Sharon?
I can't think of anything at the moment. Last call for the comments, for the questions. If you have any more questions for Jody.
Yeah, last call for questions. And Terry's pointing out, you can see our success stories at the link that she's giving. And also, if you want to ask me questions about anything about your case and how, what we have found, we find it works for any age group. We really would prefer not to work with babies in this program. It's harder. It's better to wait till at least they're weaned, and, we generally do age 3 and up. And, teenagers may not be ready to work with us. There are some lifestyle changes that happen. So if you have a teenager, they have to be motivated to work with us, because that was one of the few cases where I couldn't help this little girl who loved the way her spots looked, and that's wonderful, good for her. But she didn't want to follow anything. And that's, if they're not ready to follow, then that's not going to work. But if you're motivated and you really want to see changes, I think 2022 is going to be your year. I think you're going to notice, we hopefully can completely stop the progression of the disease and start seeing some pretty major repigmentation. So yeah, you're welcome, Julie. Looking at the questions here, but thank you all so much for having me. And Sharon, I just want to commend you for everything you're doing for the vitiligo community. I think it's wonderful. I loved listening to your story. For those of you who don't know Sharon's story, maybe she could post it, but I just think it's wonderful. And everything that you've learned from it and what you've shared about it is really amazing. And so I give you so much credit. And so thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. It really means a lot to know that, people's lives are being changed. Our whole motto is there's no one right way to heal. So, like Jody said, if you love your spots, you love your spots. If you want to see changes, you want to see changes. And there's nothing wrong with either of those things, So yeah, definitely reach out to us, reach out to Jody. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking about this. And like Jody said, this will be available for replay. It'll also be on our landing page and on our website and on our YouTube as well.
Okay, thanks, guys. Take care, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Bye.